Are together. We got it recording. All right. Today we're going to be discussing from challenges to solutions, a yearly overview of risk management, freight risk management, and enhancing your procurement initiatives. I'm honored to be your host and moderator for this insightful discussion. Over the next hour, we're going to embark on a journey guided by the expertise of our distinguished panelists from Del Monte, Amir, Sports, Emerge, and Bear. And in the most recent months, we've seen geopolitical events impact freight in the Suez Canal. We've seen climatic events impact throughput of the Panama Canal. Both events have caused companies to actively assess risk and, where needed, choose alternate strategies. On the domestic front, we've seen transportation companies impacted by low rates, while operating expenses remain impacted by inflation. Conversation today is going to be divided into three sections, each crucial for the evolution and future trajectory of this dynamic facet of our industries. First, we're going to reflect on the challenges and responses and adaptations witnessed in the past year. Then we'll delve into the current state of affairs, exploring how technology, analytics, and strategic approaches are instrumental in overcoming those obstacles. And finally, we'll look forward to the upcoming year. We'll analyze how technologies and strategies and anticipatory measures will empower your freight procurement teams for success in the foreseeable future. Throughout the discussions, we invite you to actively participate by placing questions into the Q&A chat. Welcome once again to all of you, and let's get started by introducing our panelists. Randy, if you could start by a brief introduction.
Yeah, hi, I'm Randy Cooper. I'm the Director of Transportation at Del Monte Foods Incorporated. Been there for about the last 9 years and have been in transportation and logistics for the last 24.
Thank you, Randy. Mihai, can you give us a quick intro?
Hello, everyone. My name is Mihai Stroh. I'm responsible for global inbound transportation for Amor Sports Group, and been with the company for about almost 13 years now.
Thank you, Mihai. Johnny, can we get a quick intro?
Good morning, and maybe good afternoon, good evening. I don't know what is the hours that we have here. Johnny Vangi, located in US and Louis, Missouri, responsible of the Center of Excellence of Logistics, Bear Crop Science. 20 plus years of experience supplying the world of supply chains, 10 years in Bear organization. Thank you for having me today.
Thanks, Johnny. And last but not least, Andrew, we get a brief introduction.
Yeah, nice to meet everyone on the call. So my name is Andrew Leto. I'm the founder of a company called Emerge. We do freight procurement technology, which I'm happy to be one of the few companies that do that, finally. And I started in the industry 20 years ago, 2003. I joined the Navy when I was 18, got out, started my first company called Global Trans, became it's now the fourth or fifth largest broker in the United States for truckload. I got out of that 5 years ago, started a company called 10-4, which was visibility for trucking, one of the first players in that. And then this is my third company called Emerge, and what we do is freight procurement. And I started this company because when I was at Global Trans, I realized that there was no technology. When shippers were trying to do pricing for truckload, they would send out spreadsheets and email to their customers or to all their carriers, and all their carriers would then send them back these rates and these emails, these Excel spreadsheets. And I thought, wow, there's got to be a better way to do RFPs for freight. That's why I started Emerge. So happy to be here with everyone.
Thank you, Andrew. Well, let's get started. We've got a series of questions here, and we've got a brief amount of time here. But let's start. Really, first question is for Randy here. Randy, as you look back at the last year, what were some of the major challenges you faced in your freight operations, specifically around contracts?
Yeah, if you think about the last really 2 years in transportation, it's been pretty good for the shippers. And I think what the challenges that we're seeing right now, a lot of them you mentioned have to do more on the global markets and the issues that we're having in the Middle East and how that's impacting ocean freight. But some of the things maybe you wouldn't think of is we're having to learn new ways to engage carriers, especially when it comes to contracting. It's not enough anymore to just do an RFP once a year and expect those contracts to hold for a year. Like I said, we've been lucky in the last couple of years in that respect, but there are a lot of other ways that we're engaging our carriers, whether it be through different pricing models that don't necessarily have that 12-month contracted rate associated with it, how to manage through that, how to make sure that we're not taking actions contracted or procurement related that are going to be detrimental to the carriers because it's been a long time with really depressed rates. So we're really having to look at things differently when it comes to pricing and contracts to make sure that we are taking actions to support our carrier base, especially, like I said, in the global markets. Like we're getting ready to start a new ocean bid, and it's going to be an interesting one for sure.
Thanks, Randy. Yeah, it's interesting that things that we would do on an annual basis now have to be reevaluated on a more regular basis. Andrew, just the kind of the next question, just kind of following up on that, but if you could talk a little bit about how your platform has adapted to the changing landscape of the freight industry, especially in the past year.
Yeah, so I first started Emerge 7 years ago, and one of the things I realized about trucking RFPs is that shippers need a more agile, faster way to do RFPs. And like Randy said, it's like you can right now rely on a year-long contract, just do a bid once a year, but everybody knows that will break down eventually. Once things start flipping the other way, and you need to find capacity more often. So you can't just rely on a year-long, do one bid a year. You have to do. I believe in running mini bids and running a lot of bids. And there's a couple other technologies that we compete with in the market, and they were never built for that. They were never built to run mini bids and to run maybe a monthly bid or even to use benchmarking and then look at your lanes and see which lane should I work on. Who's not accepting my freight, who's not on time, and how do I go out and find if I'm overpaying on lanes, running more specifically, bids on certain lanes throughout the year versus just running everything together one time. But a lot of shippers are doing that still, but things will change. And once it goes back to, if it ever does flip on the other side of the carriers, like Randy's saying, it's a shipper's market right now. But once it goes back to the carrier market, everybody needs you're going to be searching for carriers consistently. Everybody kind of forgets that it was a nightmare 2 years ago when that happened for a lot of shippers, and when route guides were breaking, and you had to find capacity, and it wasn't easy. So I think getting ahead of that is key, and that's what we differentiate ourselves at Emerge, is that we make it easier to run smaller bids and make it faster, and then all the things that go along with it.
Thanks, Andrew. It's the ability to move fast and respond quickly as we're experiencing these disruptions, or just managing day-to-day business, is becoming ever more a requirement for companies and for transportation departments. Randy, just to kind of go back to you just real quick here, but how did your freight strategies evolve in response to market changes or disruptions in the last year?
Yeah, even going back further than the last year, I think that, it's always been very cyclical. The transportation market, you call it like every 14, 16, 18 months, it's going to flip. And, the way that we've been looking at procurement strategy in particular is trying to take some of those peaks and valleys out of that equation, right? Like to try to not look at things in 12-month blocks, but try to look more 5 years down the road, and where do we want our budgets to be 5 years from now? So, while you might not get the lowest lows when you take that kind of a strategy, you also don't get the highest highs. And so we've taken a good look at our carrier base, made sure that we're meaningful to all of the carriers that we work with. We don't typically, have a carrier that's going to call just one or two lanes because that's never going to hold up. So we've tried to consolidate our freight, go with fewer providers, try to embrace some of the newer technologies, where if we have, say, a long tail of random freight. You have your core lanes, especially in a company like mine, where we're going to ship into Walmart, Target, some of the major grocers. We also have some of the mom and pop shops that only order a couple of times a year. And the best way to handle a lane like that is not to try to go get a 12-month rate. It's never going to hold up. So, partnering with companies like Emerge, to embrace some of their ideas that they've had over the last couple of years to try to handle that long tail random freight is something that we're always evaluating.
Both yourself and Andrew talked about, that the markets flip, and so there's this, we're in a shipper's market now. Is there a sense from either of you of when the market may flip here in the coming months or quarters, into more of a carrier market, or do we see the status quo kind of holding?
I can take that. I think we have to see a lot more capacity leave the market, which it's not. I mean, it's not happening it's not great for carriers. I mean, I see the rates in the system. Anything under $2 a mile is never a winner for a carrier, and that's what most of the rates I see coming in at contracts coming in at right now is under $2 a mile. Just think the driver's 60 cents, gas is 60 cents per mile, and where's the carrier going to make money? And but with that said, there's no investment right now. No one's buying trucks. As you know, our country gets bigger. It's not like I don't think the economy is going to do it. I don't think it's our economy that's going to pull us out of it. It's going to have to be either capacity leaving, but also I think with technology getting smarter. For instance, I believe one of the biggest things that we could take advantage of in this country, and shippers especially, is private and dedicated fleet capacity, because half the trucks on the road are private dedicated fleets of the shippers. And 40% of the time, those trucks are empty, moving empty, going back, for a shipper empty. So there's so much of this unutilized equipment out there. And that's what, that was one of the main reasons I really wanted to start Emerge, because I said, if we could get enough shippers RFPs on one platform and then overlay all the capacity from these private dedicated fleets, essentially anytime you could find a private dedicated fleet to put your freight on, that's taking a truck off a road that needed to move that load for a for-hire truck. And that truck's going back empty anyway. So you're not only doing something great for yourself, you're going to save money. You're going to save at least 10 to 15%. You're also going to be doing something. You actually do one thing for the environment, because that's the only thing I believe in trucking you can do to be sustainable, is to actually try to move your freight on trucks that are going in that lane anyway. So I don't think it's going to be like a big flip unless we have some like massive event like we saw with COVID that's going to change it to be a carrier market again, because there's so many tools right now that everybody's starting to utilize to move capacity that isn't even being utilized today, like the private dedicated fleets, which are going to hurt, honestly, trucking companies further. I don't believe it's a great time to start a trucking company, or to think optimistically that two years from now the rates could flip it back in our favor unless there's a drastic event.
Yeah, it really does feel I totally agree. Like I don't think this is an instance where you're gonna see the economy drag it to the other side. I agree with that. Feels like it's gonna be something that's gonna be more gradual and easier as a shipper to deal with, as we start to move that direction. We're bumping along the bottom right now, but I don't see anything that makes me think it's gonna climb.
Yeah, the good news is for carriers is it really can't go any lower. I mean, it's not good right now, but if it goes any lower, you're out of. I mean, no one can take freight any lower than it is right now.
Right.
Thank you both. I appreciate that. We're gonna switch here to the next section to talk about present day, and Mihai, the first question is for you here. Considering the current global situation, we talked in earlier, I talked about, and it's been brought up a little bit here in terms of some of the geopolitical and climatic events that are impacting ocean freight. but how important is flexibility in freight strategies, and how can technology support this need?
Flexibility is a must. I mean, I think I would go more than 2 years like Randy did. I think we can go back to the trade war that Trump initiated. I think this is the time when we see quite a bit of disruption in supply chain and the capacity infrastructure being overwhelmed in the US. And of course, COVID moved in. And just last year, I mean, I don't think there is something that we missed in 2023 in the global environment, from volcano eruptions, from flooding, from drought. I mean, you name it. And now we're adding conflict and more social unrest around the world, which is really creating a challenge in the global environment. So flexibility is a must. Contingency plans are must to be there to avoid disruption or to mitigate as best as you can the situation. I mean, what's happening in the Red Sea today, I think it's clear for everybody. It's serious. It's a war that it's escalating, unfortunately, that is really impacting all of us one way or another. So alternatives are a must. I think all companies understand challenges are happening, you know, shippers market, carriers market, but at the end of the day, we need to find a solution. So I would say flexibility is a must. And when it comes to technology, we see some unreliable communication and tracking coming from ocean carriers in particular. So when COVID hit and ports were in gridlock, carriers even stopped reporting, you know, ETAs and what was moving. So the need for visibility, I think it's a must, and predictability, right? So if you have, you know, if you're shipping food, obviously the food might go bad by the time it reaches your warehouse or your customer, right? If you're moving medical supplies, you know, some people might be heavily impacted. And regardless of what you're shipping, you need to be in a position in your function in supply chain to make sure that you are reliable and your colleagues can predict when they should receive the goods. So softwares, we're using something we try to track as close as possible. I think the global reliability today sits below 60%. So everything goes perfect from manufacturing, equipment availability, capacity. You have only 60% chances that your shipment will arrive at destination. So to mitigate that and try to be more reliable, we try to predict that ETA, try taking into consideration all the factors along the way.
Amazing how if you look back over the last several years, each year is marked by different types of disruptions domestically and globally. And I go back to, you know, 2020 is obviously the COVID year, but I also remember, you know, in the role that I had at that time, I was dealing with 7 different hurricanes that were hitting the US. And all the disruption that was causing. And I think at one particular time, there's 2 of them that hit at the same time. And it's amazing how much flexibility is needed just to manage through that, both prep and then the aftercare of that. The other thing that I kind of see is that as these disruptions hit, there is a movement away from a primary mode of transportation to an alternate, a secondary. And that secondary doesn't always have the capacity needed to handle that. And so even today, in the ocean freight, we're seeing now reliance on rail to, you know, be able to overcome some of these choke points that we have globally on the ocean freight. But the visibility to your point becomes paramount. Appreciate that. Andrew, just kind of on that same side here, from your perspective, in what ways does technology address the pain point that enterprise shippers commonly face in the freight procurement?
Yeah, I think, like I said, freight procurement has always been, in my opinion, overlooked by technology companies, since there's only, like I said, there's only less than 5 companies that I even know that do freight procurement technology in the United States, in the world. There's just not many. There's just been very little investment in it. And if you think about it, what is every CEO of every company's first thought when he thinks of transportation is what's the cost, and then the second thought is what is this, and the head of sales is what is the service. So like we need cost and service. But so think about procurement. The whole idea of procurement is cost, finding the right cost from the best cost, but also the right service, and then awarding to those carriers. So that's, I think, is the most important thing in transportation. As far as I just can't believe it's only a handful of companies that do what we do, because I think it's one of the most, probably if not the most important thing you do as a transportation manager is the procurement of your freight. Is who do I give my freight to because I need service, and then what's my cost? So that's what freight procurement technology should do, those two things. So scorecarding, having scorecards with all your carriers, that comes from your TMS, and most shippers don't have the right scorecards. So I think first thing you have to do is have the right scorecards on every one of your carriers. And then you put those together with procurement technology, whether it's ours or someone else's, and then use that with benchmarking to determine who do I give my freight to, who do I award to. And then, so you're always benchmarking your lanes throughout the year. That gets key. This way, you know how you're paying towards the market, but also you're always monitoring your carrier's service as far as on-time pickup, delivery, and acceptance. Those three things. Those three things are the most important things. And then, but combining that with the technology that does that. So one of the things I think when I learned that about what we should, the hardest part of building any freight technology is the optimization of running scenarios. Every shipper wants to give so much to their incumbents, but if that incumbent's, how's that incumbent performing? So if they're performing to a good benchmark, then you should give it to them. So I think having all your scorecarding, your industry benchmarks in the procurement platform is the key to running a good procurement cycle. And then I think the right way to do it is do 3-month contracts, but like guys like Randy they don't have the means to do a 3-month contract. Their team's not big enough. It's easy. It's better to do a year-long contract in that scenario. But if you can, the more consistent you can run events, the less your carriers have to put cushion on the rates. Because even if you see you could do a 3-month contract versus a 12-month contract, you could always get a better rate. Is on the trucking side. And I think that, if you can do it, run a faster bid cycle. But always have you think about benchmarking, think about carrier scorecarding, and then combining that with your procurement events. Oh, and then that's the best, most efficient way to run procurement.
Awesome. Thank you. I at the very beginning there as you were talking, you talked about cost and service, and I think that's a transition we've seen many supply chain functions go through, from focusing on being a low cost operator to now having the service function, and seeing transportation and other supply chain functions not only serve the bottom line like they have historically done, but now become valuable to that top line, and then be able to understand how do you improve and manage that service through the things that you just talked about, from scorecarding and benchmarking and managing those events. So awesome. Johnny, if we haven't heard from you yet, so not to leave you out, but curious from your perspective, what role does data analytics and predictive modeling play in your decision-making process for strategy and transportation operations?
Yeah, thank you. I think we are discussing too much. The discussion is pretty good about the shipper, the optimization, but I think we need to think about customer. This is something changing dramatically, at least in our business right now. This is our priority right now. Whatever we do back downstream, the customer is transparent. What they wanted, at least, by the way, for perspective, is just to get the right product and the right time. Very simple. And then you get NPS, voice of partner, and then it's coming maybe the second part. When you are clear about the customer expectation, maybe it's coming what we are discussing here about technologies and freight and whatever we have in the downstream and upstream. In our case, I truly believe in technology, but at the same time, we need to get clear the data, because you're talking about machine learning data. I'm going to give you one example. We have the TMS today in 65 countries, 65 in all the models, ocean, road, air. I think we are pretty robust, we put very robust investment, even all the models, procurement, execution, and payment in just one system. This improves our life because at least we have visibility from the shipper, from the customer perspective. And by the way, we are connecting even with the sales rep. All this system is connecting in visibility because I think Mihai mentioned something about visibility, right? It's how we are connecting and the sales rep with my farmers. I can see where is my ship, what is the go-to-market like you have in Amazon, right? So I think this is an evolution. We are not there for sure, but I truly believe in the foundation. You need to get the data, the right data. We have 4 ERP in our company. So how do you get the right data from 4 ERP? We are moving to S/4HANA right now. At the same time, you're putting some technology of TMS, but we have Mihai say, visibility technology as well in raw material and in the go-to-market. So I think I truly believe in this because this is the only way that we can see improving. Even I think Randy mentioned a mom and trans, small carriers. We have more than 600 carriers in US in the go-to-market. So and we have guys, we are just responsible the go-to-market in small farmers unit, small town. And we need to develop these carriers. And I think through believing with technology, but at the same time, I believe in what we call change management with our partners, these carriers and the technology. So I would say that these 3 elements, connecting with the customer, is the way that I see this data analytics and technology that is going to help to move to the future.
I think that just merges nicely with where Andrew was in terms of talking about service and really getting to that place of saying, how do we maintain that customer focus? It's amazing how difficult it can be to get the data that you need to make the decisions that are required.
I would say, I would add, I think what I've seen also, shippers that overpay on trucking, the trucking side of things domestically, are ones that don't have a centralized procurement team that handles it and they let it. I don't know if that's what you meant, that you have different team. Like if you have a locally controlled procurement, it's like, hey, they control their market, you're going to pay on average 10% more on trucking. Especially, just because it's like they don't have if you have everyone, this area might have a carrier that they like versus this area, but that carrier is the same service. But there's another carrier in the company that has needs in that area more so than the carriers that they use. So it's just I think it's centralizing procurement is still key. Instead of having all these different siloed divisions doing it, because I've noticed a lot of companies have done that we started talking to, and then when we see how they're paying towards trucking, it's usually significantly higher.
I agree with you entirely, Andrew, because we do the same. We try to combine the volumes from all our divisions, all our brands, and we get more consistency through the year in terms of volume. When everybody ships, we're shipping, but when nobody's shipping, we are still shipping. So we're pretty stable through the year. Looking, like you said, rate cards for the carriers could be ocean, air, truck. But at the same time, we have to rate ourselves as a company, right? Who are you for those carriers? How important are you for those carriers? And going back to what Johnny's saying, different companies have different strategies, but we are also very focused on our customers, our guests. It's very important for us to make sure that we listen to them, we stay by what we say we're going to do. And yes, our main business is not transportation. Transportation is a function of the supply that has to work. Going back to what also Randy said, we have to change a little bit how to engage with those carriers. And I agree completely. We have a saying internally, it's like negotiation never stops through the year. And we call it like a dance through the year because we do believe in partnerships and we try to build partnerships. We're talking about, cost versus value. You're not going to get the proper balance if you don't have a solid partnership with your carriers. You have to be fair to them. You have to maintain your integrity. And I would say you should expect the same in return.
Thank you, guys. We're going to wrap up the present day section here just by talking through metrics and key performance indicators. And so, yeah, two questions around that. And first, really, is for you, Randy. When we think about, what metrics and key performance indicators do you prioritize when assessing the success of your freight strategies that you've deployed?
Yeah. So, I mean, cost and service are obviously the big ones, right? On-time delivery is king. We have more and more of our customers that have decided that we're going to use fines and fees to try to force compliance to super high service. And so you have to look at that as one of your factors for success. Cost, we look at cost per hundredweight. It kind of takes the mileage and all the other different factors out of it, so that we can do an apples to apples comparison. But more and more, there are other factors that we're looking at. We talked about visibility earlier, and how often and how timely are the updates that we're getting from our carriers, so that we know where our products are. So, the worst thing that you can do to your customer is let them be the one to tell you that a shipment's late. So everybody wants to have ETAs. We have a lot of different things going on with our major customers on providing ETAs so that they know, when is their shipment going to be there. So we're starting to layer that in as well, just visibility, billing accuracy, that kind of thing, in order to be considered like that A carrier for Del Monte.
Fantastic. Andrew, just to kind of close out this section on metrics there, can you share any common metrics that you've seen for shippers while utilizing your technology? I'm curious about buying behaviors and how benchmarking has been utilized.
Yeah, I think the most obvious, I think it differs by shipper, but I think carrier acceptance is probably the most important. I believe on-time delivery is just as important, but acceptance as far as, because that's where if you're getting paper rated, and what a paper rate is when you get doing an event and you see, and you had, like, let's say you do an event with 50 carriers, and then you see 3 or 4 carriers putting in rates that are well below what you've ever seen before. And then you think, well, is that a paper rate? Well, it's pretty easy to know if it's a paper rate or not if you could have their, if you have a history with that carrier and you see their acceptance rate. So I think just acceptance is one of the most important things to have. I mean, you have to know how often they accept your freight when you've awarded them freight. Second would be on-time delivery, and then on-time pickups just as important, or just as pretty important, because that's going to hold up. That's going to cause you other issues from the facilities. And then that one thing that I think that is that we haven't done yet, but I think it's something that I think that should be addressed. We'll eventually have this in the technology, but every shipper knows, like, that when times were bad, what carriers helped me out the most, what carriers were accepting my freight. But that's really in their memory right now of what happened 2 or 3 years ago. So I call it like maybe a loyalty kind of score. How loyal are your carriers to you in the good, in the bad times? Because right now everybody's going to be good to you, and it's not going to be easy to judge anyone, because everybody's going to be almost 100% accepting all your freight. So what carriers were good to me when things hit, were rough, and which ones actually, because it's not that the carriers were bad. Well, I would say this: the carriers that were bad saw that they could get paid 30 or 40% more on freight, and they left in a lot of ways, and they could blame it on multiple things. They just weren't accepting your freight, but they were making money. They were going elsewhere to find freight that was paying more. So loyalty, I think, is key, is something that you should have internally. And I think a lot of shippers do know that, but that's one thing that I would have, like, kind of metrics around that. How loyal were they in the bad times?
Yeah, I really like that, Andrew, that the loyalty piece, the cultivating of those strategic partnerships with the carriers, the folks that are going to be there for the good and the bad, and try to make the most profitable situation for both. I think that's an awesome insight. We're gonna round into the third section here and talk about kind of what's to come. Let's start looking forward here. Mihai, we're gonna start with you and just talk about how you see the role of technology evolving in the freight industry in the coming year.
I mean, technology it's evolving quite fast, and there are so many options there that might fit your business. I say might because we will look at different areas where we can improve our efficiency. Like Johnny was saying, we rely on technology a lot and data and how accurate the data is. It's a must for us to make sure that we make informed decisions, and also how we communicate with our customers internally with the C-suite and so on. So technology, it's a must. In the same time, there are a lot of platforms out there that look amazing. There are a lot of people working for, the Instagram, the Facebook, the Apples that they design so nice, intuitive, user-friendly platforms that they look very attractive. But in the same time, we noticed you need more than that. You need that solid bone for able those softwares to perform properly. I mean, we use tendering softwares to measure our tenders. We use benchmarking softwares to understand where we are and how to strategize our procurement. Technology is a must. And I look back, I've been in supply chain for quite a while, and I know I started at one point where customs entries were done on typewriters. A lot of people don't even see those typewriters nowadays. Now everything is EDI, so everything it flies through the space sometimes. But I think technology is a must. I think we all should embrace it. I think every person should allocate time to try to stay on top of what's out there and try to see what fits their business best. Johnny said that they are moving to S/4HANA. We're doing the same. We're evolving, right? We had different systems, but we want to see what's better. How can we prepare for us to be in a strong position as a company and try to look ahead and way ahead? And if you disregard technology, I think you're going to be left behind at one point.
It's a great point in terms of allocating time to keep on top of the emerging trends, the emerging technology, understanding what's right in front of you that people are actively using, what's on the horizon that's being tested, and what's beyond the horizon, if you will, to keep the metaphor there.
I mean, it's
I
AI,
think that becomes
blockchain.
critical.
There's a lot of things happening, but you cannot rely fully on AI, right? Everybody can, put a question in ChatGPT and think, hey, I have my strategy. Goes back to loyalty, go back to strategic partnerships, and those are developed by human interaction. So I don't think technology will replace professionals. They should replace the low value or no value tasks. Like, for example, could be invoice auditing, right? If there is a way to automate that would go a long way, instead of having an army of people, depending how many invoices you have, to go and try to check every surcharge. I think we can be more efficient with having the softwares, but I think what is the key point that we see is the visibility that we can engage with our customers better to try to provide that and stick to that expected ETA. Now we're getting not just a day, but we get a window between, let's say, noon and 2. The truck should arrive to deliver to a specific retailer, which is hard. So technology it's a must, and we should embrace it, even if you like it or not.
Thank you. Johnny, just to kind of keep on that topic here, really curious from your perspective about emerging trends or innovations in management that you find really exciting or game-changing.
I'm with Mihai. I received a report from Gartner, right? The top technologies trend 24. Cyber extortion, machine customer, argument workflow, end-to-end. So it's very complex. My first question is, do we have the maturity in the company to move to this? Or do we have to focus on the foundation with quality, focus on cost and serves, and then you go to move? And I think we were this discussion today, right? In a meeting with the Asia team. We need to walk, run, and fly. And I think sometimes you want to fly, get some cool technologies, but by the end of the day, this is not improving your experience with the customer and your cost. So that's what I think we need to be careful on this one. I believe in the technology, no doubts, but at the same time, we need to be realistic. And depending in our case, that we are a global company, more than 55 countries across the globe, we need to be realistic as well that the technology is different in US, that the technology is different in the carriers in Brazil or in Asia, wherever. So this is something that we need to take in consideration. But talking about technology, something we are doing right now, and I truly believe is digital twins. This is something that how you're connecting the different platforms, TMS, EDI, that Mihai mentioned with the warehousing, all the warehousing in our case, they have EDI. How can I have track and trace in my raw material? Even a platform in planning in just one platform. It's a single voice or single source of truth. This is our, to be honest, our end goal in organization, in crop science, to get at least one end-to-end platform. This is something, even my providers and my stakeholders asking for this. So if I talk about technology, you can have these cool things that is coming for 24, but I believe in this end-to-end we call ecosystem logistics.
That makes sense why you were talking about data earlier. If you're talking about digital twins now, certainly the amount of visibility that it can give an organization when pulled together properly is amazing. And the type of responsiveness and flexibility that an organization can have, supply chain, the transportation function can have is fantastic. Mihai, just curious, for the audience here, we've been covering off on a lot of topics here, but as we think about the attendees here and as they're preparing their freight strategies for the uncertainties of the upcoming year, do you have any recommendations or thoughtful points for them to consider as they're preparing for that work?
I think it's obvious that disruptions are here to stay. So every time we have the feeling that we are leaving something behind, something else pops up. So I think for the 2024 disruptions are here to stay. I think it's very important to have backup plans in place, and not just one, but to add at least a couple, just to make sure that you can support the business. Resilience, it's a must and has to be built on a strong foundation. Partnership with the carriers for us, and I think it's key to make sure that they are accepting your cargo, like Andrew was saying. They are reliable. You want to be associated with them, right? Because also we didn't touch base on sustainability portion, but it's very important for us as a company. It's very important for us, I would say, as a species. If you look what's happening around the world, we were talking about tornadoes earlier, but there are key factors that we don't have to disregard. I think we have to stay prepared and prepare for the worst. We don't know if the level of water is going to grow in Panama. We don't know if the trucking capacity will be enough for a different wave of whatever. So it's stay prepared. Make sure that you keep your level of integrity where it needs to be, so you'd be an attractive customer for potential carriers.
Awesome. Andrew, I'm gonna pull a slight audible here in the order of questions, because I'm really curious to get your perspective about the upcoming year, kind of the role of technology and kind of what your advice would be to folks as we think about preparing for disruptions. Just curious, it's kind of a wide open question for you, but how do you see the role of technology emerging this year, and what are some helpful points you might give the audience?
I think the first thing is data. It's having data like from your TMS and your procurement system to get making sure that you're getting the right data from your TMS, and then because a lot of shippers, it's not, even if it's right, you should always check it. Always check your data. I mean, it's never ever perfect the first time you see it, and there's always some anomaly that makes it look bad. Like you might pull your data and say, oh, everybody's 99% on time, or pick up, and it's like, no, they're not. Or it might look really, actually, from the other, actually probably looks worse because but there's so many factors that go into it. Like maybe you guys change the order and it doesn't affect the pickup date. I think getting your data right is key first. But I think as far as technologies that are coming out, once you get your data right, because it's not even like you can't even talk about technology until you get your data right. As far as making sure it's never gonna be perfect, but it's in its best place. Once you get that right, one thing that we're putting out this year at Emerge is AI within our system. So I was like just testing it the other day, and it's really cool because you could say like, what was my top 5 lanes last year as far as spend, or what's my, just asking questions just with a simple we're tying it to ChatGPT, which is pretty awesome. It's actually easier than I thought it would be to do. And so just tying AI in with it, so you could actually ask, who was my number 1 carrier last year? Who were my top 10 carriers? Who are my top worst carriers? But obviously none of that will work unless you have the right data in the system. But I think I think one of the coolest things that's coming out that I've seen is tying AI into your procurement events and using that to look at your data versus all these massive spreadsheets that you probably have.
Yeah, I could stand to do without some of these massive spreadsheets for sure. I think creating a symbiotic relationship with AI and your teams becomes a critical thing. It's awesome to hear that that's a focus for Emerge in the coming year and how it can help. I think when you talk about we've talked about data several different times in terms of being foundational, and I think Johnny, you talked about do you have the right building blocks in place to start to work on some of these more advanced types of technologies that are out there. And I guess the kind of the final question, Johnny, is for you for our webinar here. But when you think about collaboration, we haven't really touched on collaboration a lot here, but I think it's a good one to end on. What collaborative strategies are effective in identifying and mitigating risks through the end-to-end supply chain?
Yeah, I think Andrew mentioned at the beginning, or I think Randy, the rule of the game need to be clear contracts when you talk about your providers, right? We believe in that we need to develop our providers. It is a journey together. This is not a lot. This is not just about Bear or I don't know, Del Monte or whatever. No, this is about the industry, right? So I think first you need to get this partnership from both sides, get the rules of the game clear, improve your capability from your size and your providers, and then move to the next level. I think if you are together and this combination between the shipper, the industry, and even the technology platform, right? Because today you see a lot of technology platforms, they offer so many things, but at the same time, you need to be realistic, what you really needed. So I think these elements, and finally, I know that we have just 2 minutes more, maybe the change management element, that with every journey, we need a change management. So when we talk about the industry, when we talk about the shipper, we need to be realistic that is changing everything, but at the same time, we need help. So I think the element of change management from both sides for everybody is important to be clear. But I think the most important is how you can build this relationship for a long term. It's going to be the big change for us, and how you can develop even these small carriers for move to the next level together. Okay.
Awesome, Johnny. Thank you. We do only have about a minute left here. So I do want to thank all of our panelists for your time here today and bringing forward this topic and being able to really unpack it. Fantastic discussion along the way. Still trying to recover from 4 ERPs that Johnny talked about. I had some flashbacks there. Mihai, I'm trying to remember when I last saw a typewriter. But glad that we get to talk about some emerging technologies like AI and how it's being used in different platforms and looking at the different strategies that we have. I know there were some questions from our attendees out there. We tried to hustle through our content here, but I'll work with the organizers here and determine how we can best get some of those questions answered and back. We do appreciate everybody's time and participation in this. Thank you again to the panelists, and have a great rest of your day or evening, wherever you are.
Yeah, great job. Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye, everyone.